Welcome, everybody, to Dom and Vaughn. I'm Dom.
I'm Vaughn.
And today we are going to be talking about the battles of the MCU.
More particularly, the Avengers. Now, this topic actually came about a few weeks back because Dom and I were having a conversation, and I mentioned one of the fights from Infinity War, and it's a certain gripe I have. So we'll start there. Now, we're a bit new in this whole YouTube thing, so we're not going to play the clips from the movie in this video. Maybe we'll get to that point down the line. But if y'all remember the iconic fight between Iron Man and Thanos on Titan, there's a point right after Iron Man gets his dual battering rams and pounds Thanos into a wall. Once he does that, he just stops fighting for a moment and lets Thanos recover so that he could then rip Tony's mask off. Now, I'm a big fan of fights in movies, and it's a real problem for me when characters just turn their brain off and forget that they're fighting so that the plot can happen and Thanos can do the move that the writers want him to do.
Yeah, it's a really good way to show that these characters actually know how to fight to save their own lives.
Yep, and, the planet, this guy's out in space, doesn't know where he is, and just forgets how to fight for a few moments. And so things like that I have a bit of a problem with. But for this video, that's how our conversation started back when we had it. We started there, and then we just flowed into a bunch of other stuff with the Avengers, and we realized that a bunch of the battles suck. So without further ado, let's get into it, starting with Avengers 2012. Now, this is the one that the both of us don't really have too many problems with. I think I rewatched the Avengers at some point 2-3 years ago. I think it still holds up,
Yep.
It definitely seems pretty campy, a bit goofy. It's very comic booky, which I think is just perfect for what that film is trying to encapsulate. So, the Battle of New York. Don't have too many problems with this one, if I'm being honest. But what is the major problem?
The enemies.
The enemies. Specifically, the strategy of the enemies. What is Loki's plan? All right, he opens up a big, nice portal, starts bringing the Chitauri in, and they start attacking New York City. But once that's done, once New York City is reduced to rubble, or they seize control of it and they have hostages or something, what's the plan to conquer the rest of the world? What is the plan?
No idea.
We don't know. We don't know what Loki's plan is. Loki's plan has already been kind of shoddy up to this point. So I don't really know if he even really had one. I'm left to wonder. Because the movie chose not to give me that information of what his plan was.
Yep, for all we know, the plan was just, all right, he wins the Battle of New York, and then Thanos is just all right, Earth is yours, I'll back you on that.
Exactly. Now, in terms of the actual structure of this battle, we have the Avengers split off into different points, this mainly being after Hulk shows up and they really have Cap tells them all what their tasks are, and they all go off and do that. I think that this is a good battle in terms of, how the characters got there, the justification for how it's set up. I think it's done well. I just don't like the way that Loki's going about his invasion. I just think it's as basic as it gets. Mm-hmm. But I like the setup for it. I like putting Hawkeye on the roof. Captain America's strategy was perfect. It's just that the writers, ignored parts of it. We have Thor bottleneck the portal and start doing his lightning blast, but he never does it again. That could be fine if Thor's doing his bottleneck, but a Leviathan comes straight at him in retaliation. You could easily set it up to where he can no longer do his job. Right? Yep. But they didn't do that. They just showed him doing it, and then they no longer showed him doing it.
Yep, he just forgot he could do that.
Yep. But, Avengers 2012, don't have too many gripes with it. I think a lot of it happened logically to an extent, aside from a few nitpicks that we've mentioned. And, Tony does the whole thing with the nuke. Makes sense to me, just not how he survives and gets back to Earth because there's no gravity. I guess maybe we could say that the shockwave from the nuke pushed him back to Earth, but that was definitely not shown visually.
Yeah, you would think that he would have been sent back to Earth through that portal a lot faster, hurling towards the Earth at terminal velocity almost.
Yeah, but that kind of wraps it up for the Avengers 2012. I don't have too much to say on it, do you?
Nope, I believe that covers it.
All right, so next is Avengers Age of Ultron. And for the purposes of this video, we're going to mainly just talk about like the final battle / the major set piece of the movie, which in this case is the Battle of Sokovia while the city is rising up higher and higher into the sky. Now, I don't mind this one. I like how it's confined to the city. They justify it pretty well by having it lift off the ground. All the characters are kind of confined there. Yeah, Thor and Iron Man could just leave, but obviously they're here to stop Ultron. I think the Ultron, we talked about this. The biggest issue here is just that it was the first major, it was the next step in the pattern of the disposable CGI army. Because I don't know about you guys, but I just think that Ultron's robots should probably be a bit harder to destroy and kill than the Chitauri. But they really seem to be the same exact difficulty.
Yep, which really doesn't help with the stakes for the movie when it just feels like almost a repeat of the same severity of the first movie.
Mm-hmm. I just want to see I would have wanted to see the characters struggle a bit more. I would have wanted it to feel as though Ultron was a much more domineering force to be reckoned with. I wish he carried more weight. I wish it, like if 5 Ultron robots roll up on you, that should be a major problem. But Hawkeye can just take them all out, no problem. It's just easy. You know, I don't think that that's a very good way to handle a final battle with Ultron.
Yep.
But aside from the fact that the enemies are just way too weak, I think the setup for that's mostly fine. I kind of wish we saw a bit more of them safeguarding the civilians, because all we really saw was them just kind of like kill robots while civilians ran by them. Yeah, Thor did the thing where he saved the people in the falling car, but he brought them back up to the city instead of putting them safely on the ground.
Evacuated.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a bit of an issue as well. I would have wanted to see them particularly like going up into buildings, making sure that they had the city evacuated. They don't know that the city's evacuated because they haven't checked every building.
Yeah, and that's something Quicksilver could have easily.
Yeah, that should have been Quicksilver's job.
Could have utilized him much better that way.
Run evacuation. That could have been his whole thing. But
yep, and then he could have died in the process. I think that would have made his death a lot more satisfying and a lot more relevant.
Exactly. Because Ultron should realize what the Avengers are doing. He's a very smart robot. He should figure out that they're trying to evacuate the city so that they can then safely blow it up. Blow up this meteor that Ultron's setting up. Mm-hmm. If he figures that out, then he realizes that Quicksilver is the biggest threat right now, because once Quicksilver finishes his job and gets everybody to the helicarrier, once that shows up, then he knows that at that point the clock is ticking for Tony or whoever to blow it up.
Yep.
So that should be when he does his thing, and that's when Quicksilver dies. That just would flow a lot better, and it would just show the ruthlessness of Ultron, that this is Quicksilver, someone he was willing to work with before, but now that this person's in his way, he just cut him off, kill him.
Exactly.
But that kind of wraps up Avengers Age of Ultron. In terms of the battle, it's not too bad, but the enemies, the lack of real depth to the robots, any of that, it really takes it down a notch.
Yeah, they had an opportunity for improvement from the first film to the second, and they chose not to take it.
Nope. But moving on, that brings us to Avengers Infinity War. We mentioned a bit of the Titan battle. Titan, I don't have too many issues with Titan. Obviously, we all know the biggest issue is that different writers cause different issues, and when you have the same person always writing Peter Quill and then someone else does for this most important movie in Marvel history up to this point, that can be a bit of an issue when he has an out-of-character moment just so that it can satisfy what the writers want the plot to be. Because there's a lot to dig into with the whole Star-Lord thing, but I really don't want to get into that. The main focus of this movie in this video is going to be the Wakanda battle. Now, the Wakanda battle is actually the one that I had the biggest problem with. I think that the Battle of Wakanda in Infinity War was one of the most garbage battles in the entire MCU. I actually think it's worse than the one in Endgame. And if that hurts your feelings, then stay tuned. But the reason why the Wakanda battle sucks, the Wakanda battle sucks from the start. From the very start, we know that there's a dome protecting Wakanda, and Thanos drops the first obelisk down. He tries to drop it straight on top of the shield, and on impact, the obelisk explodes. Assumingly, it kills every single Outrider inside. And so instead of that, the obelisks are dropped they're dropped on one side of the dome. So my first thought is, oh dang, this dome is pretty much impenetrable, because if it can take that direct impact and not be completely unfazed, then I don't really see what they really need to worry about.
Yep.
But then they deploy the Outriders, and we see that with just enough clawing, the Outriders can slowly break through the shield. And now I'm just left wondering, where's the consistency? And are the Outriders' claws made of vibranium or something? Because how are they able to cut through a shield that a direct impact of thousands of tons just didn't even dent?
And it is never explained.
Nope. But now the Outriders are all just hammering one face of the dome. They slowly start breaching through, and there's a lot of problems here. Now I'm going to need you guys to remember, remember the battle that happened. Before they even opened the barrier in the dome and let them in, Rhodey goes in and he bombs the front of the dome to kill all the Outriders that are the stragglers that are making it through.
Yep.
And now I am left to wonder if Rhodey just falsified his way through the military, because that doesn't seem strategic at all to waste a bunch of bombs on a few stragglers that Bucky could take out all of them with his machine gun. It's a massive waste. Now, here's what they should have done. There are multiple things in this battle that the Avengers and Wakanda should have done, and there are things that Thanos should have done. Because everybody seems like an idiot in this fight. Everybody seems like a moron here. What they should have done, do that little gap. Open up the little slit in the dome so that Rhodey, the second it opens, you time it right, he dive bombs out of it, and he can just bomb the entirety of the Outrider forces. If he did that, oh my gosh, it would barely even be a question. Hulk would never get dogpiled, Cap wouldn't, Black Panther wouldn't. Yeah, it would kind of take away from Thor's amazing entrance. But if I can deconstruct that, it already takes away from Thor's entrance.
Exactly.
So what they should have, that's one of the things that they should have done. Now, Thanos should have just dropped the pillars around the city in the first place, because the whole reason why they opened the slit in the dome was because the Outriders were surrounding them anyway. And they opened the slit to keep them focused in front of them, which means that Thanos should have just surrounded them from the get-go.
Yep, because then they would have been cornered.
And you would spread the forces of Wakanda and the Avengers so thin that you would practically guarantee victory. The other issue, if you guys remember, I have a big problem with logistics of these things. If you remember the moment that Rhodey got knocked out of the sky by Cole Obsidian's big giant hammer? He's got all his tech exposed, and he has complete open fire on the forces coming through the slit. And at that point is when the hammer hits him, knocks him out of the sky. Where is Cole Obsidian? He's walking through the slit. So Rhodey didn't even see the hammer coming at him. Now, of course, it's just a nice little trickery of the editing, because when he gets hit out of the sky, we're looking at him, not the slit. So it's just a nice editing trick to pass away bad writing.
Yep.
Because Rhodey should have seen that coming. He should have dodged it, and he should have never been knocked out of the sky at all. Rhodey should have been one of the biggest powerhouses of the Wakanda battle. He could take out 90% of the Outriders.
Yeah, U.S. veteran with an Iron Man suit should be almost unstoppable in a war conflict. But nope, gets taken down with a hammer flying through the sky. And it's not even Thor's.
Exactly. My other question is, how did Corvus Glaive, the guy with the big gold weapon that stabbed through Vision, how did that guy even get to the facility? Because they only opened the slit, which means that this guy would have had to make it through and just run the perimeter and hope he doesn't get noticed. How did he get through? Okay, that's another evidence of just bad writing. They just cut to Shuri, and Corvus Glaive is just there now.
He can teleport now.
I guess so, dude. I guess so. But as you can see, the Wakanda battle has a lot of issues. Another thing that they should have done is they should have never... If they had just maintained their line and just kept like, well, they don't really have too many long range weapons, but well, they don't use any. But we know for a fact that Wakanda has aerial ships, but they don't use them when Thanos shows up. You know what else they don't even use? The Border Tribe. I explained this to you when we first had this conversation, I remember. When the Wakanda battle begins, we have the entire Border Tribe from Black Panther lined up, and we have like Cap, T'Challa, some of the other main characters like right in the center, right? So we have this entire line of the Border Patrol. And it seems like that's kind of one of their strategies, is to be able to use their shields, their energy shields, to defend themselves. But when the battle is actually going on, they don't use this strategy once. I said to you, something that I just thought of is if they lined up their shields in a bit of a zigzag formation. That way they could force the Outriders into the points of that, and I'm sure they could, use that to their advantage. But they don't even use their shields to their advantage. We just see the Border Tribe in the background getting dogged on. And it's disappointing because these are supposed to be characters who are all incredibly intelligent. And you have an enemy force that's incredibly intelligent. This is Thanos. This guy's conquered planets. He's not a novice, but he's acting like one.
Yep.
And you have the Avengers, and both of them are acting like amateurs here. I have a lot of I don't respect the way that the Battle of Wakanda was crafted at all. I think it was incredibly, incredibly weak.
I couldn't agree more. There's a lot more they could have done. They could have really elevated it to be one of the best battles in cinema.
It would have been cool if like even if you keep most of it the same, even if you ignore most of the feedback that we just gave, but once they like go through the slit, like we see that the Avengers try to hold their ground, but they end up getting pushed back. And now the Outriders getting closer and closer, like deeper and deeper into the city, right? So they're getting deeper and deeper into the city, and that's how the battle changes over time as the Avengers' strategy shifts, as they go deeper into the city, trying to make sure that they don't get to Vision. But it's just, and I know why they do that. I know why they did that. They did that because they wanted to just shoot the entire movie on a green screen, so they just made a very generic set, covered it in green screen, and just did a garbage lane battle on like a grassland.
Yep.
But I'm at the point of diminishing returns now, so I'm going to move on. That's done with the Battle of Wakanda. Maybe if I think of anything else, I'll throw it in a YouTube short. But that leads us to Avengers Endgame, the one that everybody seems to love the most, and the movie that I think is lackluster at best.
Yep.
But we're talking about the final battle specifically in this video. So, I said to you yesterday that I don't mind the start of the battle. When the fight is just the main three Avengers, Cap, Iron Man, Thor, and they're fighting Thanos, I don't have a single problem. I don't even think I've really noticed an issue with the way that they had the fight set up, the same way that we saw in Titan with Iron Man and Thanos, which I described at the beginning of this video. I don't have an issue like that. I think the fight with Thanos there was completely solid.
Yep, it very much added on to the foreshadowing that they had in earlier movies, with Cap's shield being broken on this desolate-looking battlefield. Very much matched and paid tribute to that.
Yep, and I love the desperation of the fight.
Yes.
I love how desperate these three characters seem to just vanquish this foe who has come back from time. But all that changes once the portals open. And yeah, it's a nice little fan servicey moment where all the characters line up and Thanos waits for everyone to assemble before he just starts sending his forces to decimate them.
Yeah, but then also we then got to ask, why is Thanos just standing there watching them all walk through when he could be starting to pick them off as they're coming through, catching them off guard and by surprise?
It'd be the strategy. But that's not what he did.
The Mad Titan, I gotta wait. You
gotta respect your enemies. And in terms of
that's
battles,
something he's known for.
In terms of battles, I think that this giant force and this giant force just ramming into each other is really boring. I think it's very simplistic, very boring. There's no real larger objective in this fight except for getting to the van until the van is destroyed. But even then, there is no coordinated effort to get to the van. There's just a couple characters who try to get to the van, and they just pass the gauntlet off from one to another as they try to get it there.
Yeah, and on top of that, the entire battlefield is just nothing but grays.
Nothing.
The entire ground is nothing but gray, given it's supposed to be like a scorched battlefield a little bit, but then the sky is all gray. Everything is so gray. Everything is so bleak. There's no spectacle to this fight. There's nothing engaging to the eye.
Well, I disagree. It's all spectacle.
It's all the wrong type of spectacle.
Yeah. And in terms of a battle this large scale, the same way that I just mentioned with Wakanda, like the problem with Wakanda is that there is no larger battle. We're just focusing on individual characters and their individual successes on the battlefield, right?
Yeah, we're just jumping between them.
Yep. And that's exactly what we did in Endgame. There is no larger scale battle. There is only this character fights this character, and then we're going to cut to this character fighting this guy, and then we're going to have Ant-Man step on Cole Obsidian. Like, it's just all this, it's just a bunch of moments, but there's no through line that really gives it all weight. So I find it extremely disappointing. That's really, like, I can't even say that much about the Avengers Endgame battle because there just isn't really much to it.
Yeah, it's just kind of a hollow shell of a battle that could have been a glorious end to the phase.
And I also wanted to see more characters, like, working together. Like, yeah, we get our moments of, like, Cap and Thor. They get another moment where, oh, you know, in the last movie, oh, I see you copied my beard and blah, 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 blah. This is my friend Tree. And then in this movie, Cap accidentally ends up with Stormbreaker, and Thor has Mjolnir, and they trade. But that's not really much of a team up anyway. I actually think that
it's just a team up shot.
The whole team up thing was done a lot better under Joss Whedon than the Russo brothers. I don't think that I really saw too many different real team up combo moves, except for the battle on Titan. That was the only place I can really remember seeing it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that makes the final battle of Endgame very weak, is because this is the final battle. And I would want to see the characters working together to have to vanquish the threat. If there was, like, that would be present in Wakanda if they had what we described, where they're getting deeper and deeper into the city. The strategy would keep changing. The characters, where they are, would keep switching up, and they have to work together to overcome what seems to be an unstoppable force. Mm-hmm. But we don't get that in the Wakanda. We don't get that in Endgame. And I think it just makes it to be a bit underwhelming. And, of course, when everybody first saw Endgame, everybody's blinded by the hype. And in truth, Endgame is a movie that only really is able to stand on its own two feet. It doesn't stand on its own 2 feet. It's only a good movie, good because of what came before it. But if you stripped all that away and just looked at how the movie performs on its own, I think it's lackluster.
I couldn't agree more.
But that pretty much wraps up this video. Let us know in the comments if you agree or disagree that the Avengers battles could use some massive improvement, to say it nicely.
And if you disagree with us, please provide details.
Yes. And because I will be responding to those comments. But at the same time, even if you're a bit of a hater, if you made it this far in the video, I appreciate you. And we will hopefully catch you on the next one. Like and subscribe, share the video, and we will see y'all another time.